and welcome to the show. I'm V. LaBianca.
I'm Eric Murphy.
This is Skeptic Generation.
And we need to talk.
Hi, Eric.
Hey, V. How's it going?
Good. Oh, look at that. I just got a notification. Skeptic Generation went live.
Ooh.
Do you want to pop this over to viewer activity real fast?
Oh, good call. That's right. We need to be able to track any
track
super
those
chats.
super chats. Welcome, everybody. How was your week?
My week has been really, really interesting. There was a lot of stuff that went on at work.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to talk about all of that. But...
No, I think we're good. But yeah, it's been an interesting week. I got denied for a second time by my insurance to prior authorize a medically necessary procedure, so that's fun.
That's awful.
Yeah, dealing with that currently, so if I'm a little bit low energy, that is why. It's definitely not the Delta 8 hangover from last night. There are a couple things that I do want to get to, but you also kind of went down a rabbit circle yesterday.
God. Yes. Do we want to do that before the other announcements? Or?
Yeah, let's dive right in.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, y'all, we really do need to talk because I am absolutely beside myself. I'm going to do the thing that I'm supposed to do. Okay, so, hey, last week we had a caller, and in that call, we talked about the roundness of circles. I said all circles are round. There are no universes, there are no ways in which circles aren't round. And I thought that that would be a non-controversial opinion. What the hell? I wound up going down this rabbit trail of comments that absolutely... I've never become angry about this kind of thing before, but we really do need to talk about this because what the fuck? Okay, so if we want to talk about a circle, right? A circle on a flat plane, we're talking about the circumference of that circle is when every point on that circumference is equidistant from the center, right? That's how you get a circle. Right? If you want to find the area of a circle, 2 pi r, somebody was kind enough to tweet me that 2 pi r is how you find the area of a circle. That has nothing to do with its roundness, because roundness, by definition, you guys, is how similar something is to a circle. If something is defined by its similarity to a circle, then for me to say all circles are round should not be fucking controversial. It is used in 101 philosophy along with Socrates is immortal. So that way you can just get through when you're talking about deductive arguments. Oh, but what about different metric spaces? What the fuck about them? If a circle is possible in a different space, if you're using different rules because you really, really love playing math games, fantastic. If a circle looks different than something you could imagine in our current plane of existence, if that is the circle, that means that something that is like that is round by definition. Oh, what about 3D spaces? What about them? Oh, if I hold up a paper towel roll, it seems round from this side, but when I turn it, it's a tube. What the fuck does that have to do with the roundness of circles? What about sine waves? Are you fucking kidding me? We've gotten so far off base that it feels like Ralphie Wiggum in the comments is standing up saying, I like Skittles. What does that have to do with anything? I'm trying desperately now to figure out what people mean when they're saying that, because I feel like I'm trying to be an honest interlocutor, right? I'm trying really, really hard to figure out what you mean, because maybe there's a genuine question there. But you need to meet me somewhere along the way and do a little bit of the thinking work to figure out what it is about the roundness of circles that's giving you a problem. Please be pedantic. Do that. Oh, no. What if we're not in base 10? What if we're not in base 10? That tells me you don't understand what base means when it comes to that. That's like saying I weigh 210 pounds, but I don't weigh that if you measure me in kilograms. That's because you've converted it to something else. That doesn't mean that the 210 pounds has changed, right? I can change the number 17 to base 7. It's 23. Do you know what that changes on the radius of that circle? If the radius of the circle is 17 and base 10? It's the same, you're just calling it something different because you're measuring it differently. Does that change the interaction of the relationship between the radius and the circumference of a circle? No, because pi is defined as the relationship between the diameter of a circle and its circumference. No matter what base you put it in, no matter how pi changes, it is still describing that relationship. That's how math works. When you're going through those relationships, right? The relationship between, right, the diameter, I'm going to say this again, and the circumference is consistent. That's why pi is important. If you need to figure out what pi is in a different base, that's fantastic. But when you draw it out, it looks the same. And I don't even know how that gets back to the roundness of circles, but I'm really, really trying here, you guys. I'm really, really trying to meet you where we're at, because we do need to be able to talk about deductive arguments. But if you're going to stand up and say, what about rectangles? What the fuck about rectangles? Offer something. Offer relevance. Offer a counterpoint that is relevant to the point that's being made that you're having a problem with. Otherwise, you are just wasting everyone's time. I used to think there were no stupid questions, but I don't know if you can count absurdity as a question. It feels like empty calories. It's just filler. Don't give me empty calories. At least try. Because if it's something that's simply wrong, fine. But if it is absurd, it has no place in a conversation where we're trying charitably to understand each other. It is just wasting everyone's time. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Fucking angry about it. Hi, V.
You need 10? You need to take a lap?
You know what? I haven't smoked in like 7 years. I feel like I want to smoke.
There's a little smoke coming out of your ears.
No shit.
You already are.
Eric, eat a Snickers in the comment. I mean, but seriously, right? Like, if anybody wants to go on about bases, understand what base not 10 means and how that might change things, right? If you're talking about a metric space where the subset of things is small enough that you're no longer able to get it. Oh, and one more, right? Before you talk about the curvature of space-time, because someone is going to, because someone is going to. Let me beat you to the punch. Let me beat you to the punch. Let's say you have a sphere that is near a black hole and it is getting warped by that black hole. It's not changing, it's just changing your perspective of it. And so put that into that perspective, and it's still a circle. It's still a sphere. It doesn't change. I don't. But what if it's not a circle? What if it stops being a circle? Well, then it's not a circle anymore, right? I don't know why you think that I'm going down with that ship, but please, Jesus fucking hell. Okay, now I'm done.
Was that worth monetization? The number of F-bombs before the first 10 minutes?
You know what? Honestly, it was. I have 1 day off a week. Mm-hmm. I have 1 day off a week. I have Saturdays, right? This show does not pay our bills. People think that being on YouTube makes you a lot of money. It doesn't. It doesn't. But it's nice, and we like doing this. But we have real jobs that we do throughout the week. Mm-hmm. Monday through Friday, it exhausts us. Sunday, from sunup to sundown, we are busy putting this stuff out. Mm-hmm. 1 day. My 1 day, I could not stop being pissed off about the fucking roundness of circles. And I needed to stop and have something to point people back to. I want to clip this and put this out. So next time somebody throws absurdity out there, I can point them back to this as a reference.
Okay. Our first short?
Maybe. I don't even know.
Oh my gosh. Well, it would certainly introduce people to the channel. Hi, everybody. Aren't you an absurdist, by the way?
I am an absurdist.
I feel like...
No, that's like saying that absurd in absurdism
Yes.
is using that in a totally different definition. That's like saying I walked around the grocery store. That has nothing to do with the roundness of circles. You're using a colloquialism if at any, no.
Okay.
No.
I'm going to take your word for it
Yes.
because I'm scared right now.
Honestly,
Hi, everybody. Let's all take a quick breather. In, out.
we have announcements to make.
We do.
Before we dive into calls. So stick with us through these announcements because there was a shining light this week that absolutely blew us away. We were dumbstruck when we saw the email. And the fact that somebody did this was wonderful. And we want to thank them personally.
Yes. Thank you so much, Joe. Joe bought us a camera.
Yeah.
And that is an enormous step into making other versions of this show possible. Because one of the things we really want to do is get rid of that really cheesy, like, quick zoom up that's happening whenever we go into one of our close-ups and actually have cameras on both of us.
Camera, yeah.
And actually, like, build out a multicam set.
That doesn't have us sitting at a desk looking like it's a two-person Zoom call.
Yep.
Right.
So we are very excited. Joe, thank you so much.
Absolutely. If anybody was looking at our Amazon list of stuff that we're buying stuff down, those cameras were on it. And actually we got the camera and we learned something because like what we're using right now, for those of you, I mean, obviously you can't see it. It's a camcorder, right? It's a camcorder that is set to stream over to the computer. You don't need to buy lenses for a camcorder. So if Joe, if you're watching and you're like, hey, how come the quality hasn't looked better yet? We need to get the lens. We will get it. We promise. We just haven't gotten it yet.
Oh my goodness.
Partially because I need to figure out what lens we need. But we're on it. And
also, the quality probably won't look better on the live stream for a while because we're kind of hampered by the internet, but the clips and the Patreon version of the live stream
oh my gosh,
are going to be crystal.
Well,
it's going to be gorgeous.
And also digital zooms will be super crystal clear. There will be no blurriness because it'll be technically shooting in 4K.
You will get to see every single one of our pores. You're welcome.
Thank you, Joe.
Finally, I do want to let you all know that we are going to be doing a Versus episode soon. We're going to schedule it probably for next month, so we're looking at September 13th, which is a Tuesday. Usually we start those at 6 p.m. We go for an hour and a half-ish, about the length of this show. And we just have a debate between the two of us, just like a conversation that gets heated. We had one yesterday that I kind of just want to revisit that in front of people so that they can see how right I am about it. And
that is hopeful.
Yeah.
Do we want to kind of let them know what it's about? Because we did. We went into it, and honestly, you left, and then I got onto the roundness of circles.
Yeah, because your brain was already fired up. You're like,
I'm
going to do this,
and I had
then you
nobody
regretted
to argue it.
Yeah.
It was rough. It was rough.
Yeah. So essentially, we were debating the philosophical implications of knowledge versus wisdom, what they meant definitionally, how they overlap, if they are related at all. When one becomes the other, does one have moral implications and the other does not? Do they both? Are they objective, subjective? We went all over the place. We got a non-overlapping magisteria joke in there
Yes,
at
we
one
did.
point.
Yes, we did.
So it was a lot of fun. We haven't reached any kind of conclusion, and we've kind of cut ourselves off from that conversation so we don't get too far ahead of ourselves and we can do it on air.
Yeah.
So join us next month for that. I'll be posting links in the Patreon, on social media, and then on the community page as well.
And if you're wondering who uses the Dungeons and Dragons definition of knowledge versus wisdom, come on.
It's not. No.
Come on.
All right. We have some callers. We're going to dive. Are we?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We have some callers. We're going to dive in. If you are interested in giving us a call, we do still have a couple of lines open. You can reach us at 585-526-8774, or if you have your computer or your phone and you're international, you can reach us at tiny.cc/callsg, and that will connect you to our call screener today. Mm-hmm. All right, let's start with Phillip in Oklahoma.
Ooh, all right.
Phillip is talking about a double standard that Christians have for, it looks like, gore in movies versus like sex education. I'm curious about this. Phillip, welcome to the show.
Hello, I'm calling back. We had a discussion about allyship a while back, and I really enjoyed talking with you guys.
Oh yeah, I totally remember you. You called in last month. That's awesome.
Yep.
Welcome back.
Yep.
Yeah. What's your question?
So it's more of a discussion than a question. It's something that's been bothering me for a long time. And in order for us to have a discussion, I kind of have some like prerequisites to the conversation and maybe some parameters to the discussion just to kind of set us all on the same footing, if that's okay for me to kind of set those out.
Sure, go for it.
Yeah, hit us.
Okay, so the prerequisites to this conversation are all participants in this conversation are above the age of consent or the age where they can obtain a device like a gun or something like that.
Okay.
All our participants, and this is not to exclude our LGBT community, but for this discussion are heterosexual. And they're either married to each other or single and not married to each other.
Okay.
And you'll understand why I'm putting that there in just a little bit, because I'm going to pull in a little bit of Bible stuff, but it's just based on what I remember from when I was Christian.
Okay.
Next, loss of life. So someone losing one life is almost always non-consensual. Mm-hmm. Loss of life isn't consensual, right? But sexual intercourse is consensual for our discussion.
This
feels like what you have to click through to like get access to a new like social media thing, or like here are all of the stipulations that you have to agree to before you get access.
Honestly, it feels like this is the description of the universe that Marjorie Taylor Greene came from.
Yeah, right. Phillip, let's speed this up. Where are we going with this?
Yeah,
we can always double back and revisit these.
Okay, and then the last, there's just 5 more. It's just the things from the Bible that I'm pulling in for our discussion.
Okay.
First one is there's the ultimate commandment, Jesus' commandment, love God, treat others like you want to be treated. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery. Adultery is extramarital intercourse, as definition. And then the final one is God's prime directive for humans is be fruitful and multiply.
Okay.
Okay, I am not Christian. I'm agnostic, but this is just for this discussion.
Okay.
So, for example,
that is some weird cherry picking, and I hope this is a fun game.
Go for it.
This might be a fun game. You guys are experienced at it. I think we will go interesting places with it. So, here's the thing, right? Like, maybe a director for a movie, right? Some violent movie like John Wick, right? Is Christian. Is like accepting an award. Like, hey, thank God for me, my mom and everything. And you're having this, you put out this movie which Christians watch, like John Wick, where people are getting shot in the head, right? And they're losing life. And like that goes against the whole be fruitful and multiply. It's like thou shalt not kill, right? But yet it's pretty okay for Christians to be like, I saw that movie and it was awesome, right? While at the same time, right, just from an educational perspective, right? Like you could, like Christians watching an adult movie and just learning more about themselves by watching 2 people having sex so that they can learn how to together be more fruitful and multiply is something like, oh no, that's too much. That's way taboo. And I don't get this double standard because like the adult entertainment side is like, hey, it feels like, and maybe you guys can correct me, but it feels like Christians should be pretty okay with that and not okay with the like, let's shoot things up. That's where it is. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that the first person who ever brought this to my attention was my grandmother. She is a very Christian woman, to the point where, she believes she has, fruits of the Spirit, the spirit of discernment. It gets interesting, those conversations. But she did have a good point when she saw us watching, I think it was like Pirates of the Caribbean back in like, I don't know when it came out, like back in the day. And she was like, why is it not okay to see boobs on TV, but it's fine to watch people murder each other with swords? And I was like, that is a good question. That is a good question. Christians are pointing this out. Now, granted, the solution for my family would not have been, okay, boobs are fine too. It would have been, okay, now you can't have that either, which I'm kind of glad didn't take off. But we do see that with things like kids only being allowed to watch certain movies, unreasonably restricted, and then being taken to see like Passion of the Christ, right? And that's just torture porn, really, but for Jesus. Yep. And walking away scarred because that's their first introduction to that concept. And for some reason it's fine because it's about Jesus, but it is just, blood and guts. So yeah, yep. It is a disparate kind of worldview, and we could go into why I think that is the case personally, but I am curious to hear Eric's perspective and also yours, Phillip, because that would be a soapbox that I would not get off of for a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't you go first?
I just want to say, exactly what V said about the grammar, like it's okay to watch murdering, but boobs on TV is not good. Like, that's exactly where I'm going. And all the prereqs that I put here are just there for framing the discussion. That's it.
Right.
Sure. So when I think about it, I think about how I go through, how I rationalize things to myself. And I think that being internally consistent with the way that I rationalize things around me helps. And it is difficult to be internally consistent about talking about sex. I think it's easier to be internally consistent talking about death, especially when you have a faith system that is littered with justified violence. But when it comes to sex, you have something that is deeply rooted in, self-shaming. And there's just so much tied into it that I feel like if you're raised in a faith that justifies violence a whole lot more than sex, it's easier to overlook it. But if you don't justify sex very much, then you just haven't gained the experience necessary to discern the difference between any of it. And so it all just becomes bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that you hit the nail on the head on one piece of that specifically, which is the glorification of violence as a religion. And I'm not going to say that all Christians are like this, right? Obviously. But there is a very warlike rhetoric that comes from especially white evangelical spaces, especially in the US, but this isn't just a one country problem, where if you listen to the lyrics of the songs that we sing in church, washed in the blood of the Lamb. I remember telling that lyric to a partner who had never been raised religiously and who had no real understanding of Christianity outside of just the basics. And the look on his face when I was like, oh yes, as children we sang, we are washed in the blood of the Lamb. And he was like, that's gross. And I was like, yeah, I guess it is. I've never thought about it that way. But we are called to be, warriors for Christ, right? We're building an army. We are, the soldiers of the Lord. All of these things. Angels are scary and have flaming swords. And, in Revelation, Jesus basically goes on a rampage and squashes a bunch of people. It's really violent. And not every denomination or branch of that focuses on that element. But it is very helpful in a society that is centered around dominion and denomination and owning land and people and capital and expanding that ownership to be a very warlike and violent, have that worldview. especially if it's justified. And that, I think, is a big piece of this as well. The reason that you can watch John Wick as a Christian and be fine with it is because it's justified, right? If you can justify the violence, then it's fine, right? It's fully intent versus impact conversation here.
Okay.
If you can be like, hey, well, yeah, it was violent, but it was necessary because X, then you're fine. And that violence becomes amoral at worst and even morally required at best. And that is how we also justify things like the military industrial complex and everything that we hold onto with violence today. It's justified. If we didn't do this, what would happen? And so, yeah, the idea that Christians are willing to watch John Wick because it has justifiable violence in it that is a means to an end they agree with makes perfect sense from that perspective. Now, I am going to cut myself off before we go into the sexual education and repression route, because that is an entirely different category of thing. But that, to me, is why that problem, that kind of dichotomy even exists.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. And I do kind of want to bookend it with, people in the chat are saying, oh, well, it's not just a Christian thing, it's an American thing. I think we are trying to recognize where that influence and where that dichotomy, especially those of us who were raised in Christian backgrounds, saw that kind of hypocrisy happening. And now that we're adults wanting to talk about it and kind of debrief a little bit about what the hell happened, it's a good conversation to have, and I think that's why it's important.
Yeah, and the problem that we have here, yes, there is a very specific issue with Americanism in general and violence, but the dichotomy that Phillip is calling in about where sex is not okay, but violence is very specifically based in Christian ideology. If America is also happens to be sexually repressed in many ways, spoiler alert it is, that is a direct result of the kind of people who founded this country being the radical, repressive people who got kicked out of other countries and came here. So
the Northern Colony.
And
there are elements there as well.
Yeah.
And to kind of just jump in there, right? Because just as an adult, right, being able to look at it as an adult, and that's the whole reason why it is, right? Because like a few shows ago, you had the talk about the Passion of Christ and how it's gore porn,
right.
And I was like, now I can talk about this here in this context as a discussion, and like just looking at it, right? Like, and there are obviously lots of reasons for this, but like like maybe a man and a woman might be trying to have children, right? We're just going to assume that they're Christian and they're trying to be fruitful and multiply, right? But the woman doesn't know how to find pleasure from it. So making a baby is very frustrating because the act of it is painful. It's not enjoyable, right? Kind of thing. And that comes from some of that repressed. I'm just like, but like you could watch boobs on TV and a few other people get ideas and be like, oh, now I know how to enjoy it because I've been repressed all this time. But that's not okay. That's like, you've sinned, you've done all these things, but then like you can be like, yeah, we just totally watched the Saw 18 and like it was like more over the top than anything. It was pretty cool. I'd recommend you watch it. Like, how is that okay?
Well, I mean, every single Christian group is going to react to that differently. I don't think that my parents would have been okay with me watching the Saw movies at any point. Because honestly, I will be straight up, if we found out that an actor smoked cigarettes, we'd be like, oh, well, I liked him before, but now he's a sinner and is going to hell. So can't like that person anymore because they smoked. Whereas there were actors who didn't actually smoke, who didn't inhale, and we were like, oh, they're fine. Like, as long as they're not inhaling.
Are you serious?
I am dead serious. That is the level of policing that we did of our own willingness to engage with other people. If they just breathed it in and back out their nose, then they were just pretending to smoke and it was fine. It was only the ones who actually breathed it in that were the sinners. Yes.
And I would go just to say, with my background as well, like my mom was like, Sailor Moon is demonic, Pokemon is evil, and like all this, and you're just like, what? How is all of this against it? So I totally understand where they're coming from. Where
Sailor Moon
in
is
certain
demonic.
houses, it's not going to be okay, kind of thing. But just in general, at our age, right? Kind of this discussion. So.
Sailor Moon. I didn't get Sailor Moon being demonic. I know that Sailor Moon made me feel funny, and it was probably bad. It was probably bad for that reason alone. I guess I didn't need to ask. But
oh my gosh!
Thank you for calling in.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Take care.
Oh my gosh. So I'm pretty sure that the thumbnail text for this one's just going to be murder, yes, boobs, no.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just realized that somewhere someone was going to clip Sailor Moon made me feel funny.
Yeah, that's going to be following you around now.
You know what? That's what happens when you have like thousands of hours on the internet, right? Stuff just, it comes up.
Honestly, the fact that we have not had more stuff like that come up is kind of disturbing to me.
Yeah, fair enough. Who are we talking to next?
Let's take Nick in Tennessee.
Ooh, okay.
So Nick is calling in to ask if ending a life means causing it to suffer. And I'm pretty sure I know where this is going, but I'm willing to hear you out. Nick, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are y'all doing?
Doing good. You called in a couple of weeks ago, no?
Yeah.
Cool.
Rock on. Yeah, I'm coming down off of my rage over circles. So just
don't read the super chats until the end of the show and you'll be fine.
Oh no.
All right. Guys, if you want to see Eric's head explode, feel free to leave a very absurd circle-related super chat.
Please don't. Oh God, please no.
Nick, what's your question today?
Yeah, so my question is just kind of about the general concept of minimizing suffering, right? If we say it's good to minimize suffering, and if that's the standard we use for judging like how we treat animals, whether we eat them or not, whether we farm them or not. My question is, does ending its life inherently mean that you caused it to suffer? And if so, would that be a wrong thing to do, or does it, because we euthanize some animals, right?
Right. I don't think that, and this might be one of those things that gets clipped and taken out of context. I don't think that ending a life inherently causes suffering. I would not be willing to grant that. I think the way in which you end the life would cause suffering. And I think that in some cases, what we should be focusing on is the life lived up until the point of death, which ultimately, to me, is the biggest issue when it comes to animal suffering, at least in cases of industrial farming complexes and how we run things in the U.S. But no, I would not be willing to grant off the bat that ending a life causes suffering.
Okay. Have you, Nick, have you heard of or read about Temple Grandin?
No, it's not ringing a bell.
Temple Grandin, really interesting story. What she did, she did a lot, but what I'm referencing here is she came up with a system of slaughtering cows humanely that would cause them to kind of go through these circular things so they wouldn't see what's coming, that, trying to as humanely slaughter them as possible. And if you're talking about killing, right, that's its own thing. But if you were to somehow, in theory, remove the suffering from the death, then I think it would be better. The conversation, I think, would be helped if it was is life preferable to death conversation, because if you were able to remove the suffering, I bet you the conversation's not over, is it?
Correct. I think it's part of a larger conversation about just that, about the long-term care of the creatures and how you treat them up to that point of death.
Yeah.
And kind of the
sure.
I guess the implications of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So where are we going with this? Are you smuggling in veganism, Nick?
Smuggling?
Yeah.
He is came right out and said it.
Came right in? Okay. Oh, no. He's personally struggling with veganism.
Right.
I thought you said smuggling it.
I did say smuggling, but I like where Nick is going.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There is an argument that I heard that I got to admit kind of stuck with me, even though I would consider like not causing a creature to suffer before you kill it to be better than causing it to suffer before you kill it if you had to eat the creature, because you got to eat something. Mm-hmm. I think it was Joe Rogan, but it may have been somebody else that said, like, if you hunt something and you manage to kill it in one shot or something, then its life ends very suddenly and relatively painlessly compared to getting mauled by a bear or stricken with disease or getting a broken limb and whatnot. Right. So, I got to admit, to me, that's a compelling point as to why it would be morally okay, because you're giving that thing, I guess, a death that's less painful, and that feels like a very messed up conclusion to arrive at.
Well, I mean, the concern there is that you could then just take that and apply it to anything, right? Like, oh, well, this person might die a horrible death, so let me just kill him now.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's compelling, except for refuting a very specific argument that's, killing something always causes suffering, which I disagree with. So if that was the argument that was being refuted, good point. If that is an argument for how you should live your life, maybe avoid it. But yeah, I think we get into a problem with conversations around this topic because we can't quite pin down as a conversation more largely. Individuals, of course, can, but as a conversation more largely, I have not found a way to pin down exactly what the problem is with eating meat. Is it the killing? Because if that's the case, cool, we can have that conversation, right? Is it larger harm reduction and making sure that we are not factory farming animals before that point and reducing the suffering of their actual life? If that's the case, absolutely, let's have that conversation and tell me how I can help, right? If it's an environmental thing, hey, well, you know what? It's actually bad for the environment to do X, Y, Z. Here are better ways to do that and reduce harm to not just those individual animals, but to the planet. Cool, let's have that conversation. But that conversation cannot go back to killing is bad, right? And so we have this kind of circle that we run through where it's like, okay, well, which piece of this do we want to talk about and break down and have issue with? And which parts are our personal moral feelings? Because I don't want to discount those either, but making a case for the environment being harmed by factory farming does not get supported by the idea that death causes suffering, right? Those are two separate conversations. Right. So we can have whichever one of those conversations people want to have with us, but we need to make sure we're keeping that focus. And I love this conversation, Nick, because we got right down to it right away. Does, ending a life always cause suffering? I don't think so, Nick. I think you agree with me on that. So now what? Now what are we left with? What's the next step here?
All right. So this argument came to me as a refutation of my own point when I was arguing with my parents about the morality of God's actions in the Bible.
Okay.
And specifically regarding the flood. So when God killed all but 8 people, I inherently, just intrinsically, feel like that's bad. Mm-hmm. But if that brought them a relatively quick and painless suffering, as opposed to how their lives might have ended otherwise, then does that remove the moral wrongness of that evil from the action and mean that flooding the whole world was fine? And I don't like that thought at all.
Oh, okay, let's talk about suffering for a minute. Suffering is deeply related to fear and to the prolonged process of dying and seeing other people die. That is one of the things that is horrible about factory farming in many respects, is the animals know what's about to happen, and that's terrifying, right? That is where the suffering comes into play. The actual act ends that suffering. So that suffering shouldn't happen in the first place. And having your entire world flooded and drowning and seeing your family drown is not a painless or quick way to go. Like, if we're arguing, maybe a Thanos snap possibly could be a better solution for an all-powerful God to immediately get rid of folks, but like a global flood that not only killed the people but all of like everything, that doesn't feel like a more merciful way to go.
Well, and also I think that in that specific scenario, there is no merciful way. There is, period. There's not. I mean, the example that I would give is, let's say a forest fire is coming, and in the barn all the animals are tied up and there's no way to get them all out. Somebody could make an argument that putting them down before the fire got there would put them down less painfully than if the forest fire got there. Sure. And I think that if you were, having that conversation with your parents and that was kind of their argument, the problem is God set the forest fire.
Yeah.
God set the forest fire knowing and fully intending for that fire to get to the barn. And if that is the case, there is absolutely nothing that God can do that is moral or ethical, because literally all options lead to being that God's fault. It is not yeah.
I don't think, like, if I'm steel manning their position, right? Because okay, you won't study this long enough to put this together. But from their perspective, God didn't start the fire, we did. God built the barn, we set it on fire, God flooded the world to put it out.
So,
from their perspective.
I love it.
And to V's point, if everyone dies and there's no one left to mourn them, like let's say the fear, the fleeing, the drowning process, 10 minutes of intense, like, worst thing in your life, suffering and pain, right? 10 minutes. But how long would those things have lived? How much work would they have had to done? How many times would they have been frightened or fearful or injured?
So are your parents also anti-natalists? Like, I feel like if they're going to take this argument, oh, well, their lives probably would have been full of fear and suffering anyway. Why are they, I'm assuming they're pro babies being born at all, right?
Because they had you.
Like, if they are using that argument, they have to be consistent in that argument. And that argument gets them to antinatalism, which is a belief that people should not be born or brought into this world at all. So, like, you can grant them that argument, but then take it to its logical conclusion, which is, so you don't think that life is good. So, like, you think that it is better to die than to live.
I think ultimately, yeah, that's the conclusion that my father and his family came to.
Wow.
Damn.
Yeah, if you're not living for God, he's like, you're his. Yeah, I mean, even if you are living for him, you're his property to do with as he pleases. And if he's like, no, this one's
that's a fundamentally different. That's a different argument entirely, isn't it? Like, there's a difference between saying, oh, well, it was just the most merciful thing that could possibly have happened, and that's why it's okay, versus, oh, well, we're all just God's playthings, and God gets to do whatever he wants.
Yeah, if a God knew that that his creation was going to do all of these bad things, then the question is, could God have created those people to not do those bad things? When God created those people, the line usually is that God knew from the beginning that he would need to wipe out all of that life. And if you could change it and don't, you are still responsible. Or you're not all powerful.
Then you get into a conversation about free will that we probably don't have time for.
I actually don't think that falls into free will, because instead of talking about free will, what that has to do is God all-knowing? If God is all-knowing, then free will doesn't come into it. You don't even need to touch on it. Is God all-knowing? Yeah, then would God have known that these people
not necessarily.
No. So then their God isn't all-knowing, which is fine. There are plenty of people who think that. But
well, I don't want, like, there are limits to what I can assume about them for the purposes of this conversation and filming this particular argument.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So I think ultimately, Nick, the actual dying process of the flood, right, drowning, maybe only 10 minutes, but Earth did not get flooded, allegedly, in 10 minutes, right? This wasn't a boom, you're dead situation. This was, like, it takes a long time for that to happen. And people had to experience everything leading up to those last 10 minutes, all of which was suffering. And so if you are going to take that argument and say that is merciful, then you have a really weird idea of what mercy is. And if we even grant all of that claim that your parents are making, that it was merciful, okay, fine, maybe it was only 10 minutes. Maybe it magically flooded in, 15 seconds and everyone just, died. In that case, you do have to take it to its logical conclusion and ask, why does anyone exist anyway if the most merciful thing is to not exist? So I would encourage you to have that conversation and ask them to take their claim to its logical conclusion and see how far they're willing to go. Because if they are willing to go all the way, then cool, that is their worldview. They are consistent in it. We don't have to give it another 2 seconds of thought, right? Okay, that's how you see the world. That is really weird, but okay. If they can't take it to that logical conclusion,
where's the
then
disconnect?
There's a disconnect, exactly.
Yeah.
Where is that disconnect, and is that a conversation point that might be useful? So, yeah, those are my 2 cents.
I like those 2 cents.
Thank you. Nick, thank you so much for calling in. This was a really fun conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, glad to do it.
Cool.
For people in the chat or who may be watching this later, we could have talked about whether or not it was did the flood actually happen? And I know that that's a conversation that a lot of people want to have, but this was one about ethics and morality and utilizing the story that we both understand to have that conversation about theology, ethics, and morality is kind of the point of it. So for people who are saying, I just would have said that, no, we get it, but we're using this to talk about ethics. So yeah. Anyway,
Cool.
Who are we talking to next?
Let's talk to Jack in California.
Ooh.
Jack, I don't believe has called in before and is asking a question about platforming versus censorship and where we should draw the line, which is an interesting conversation. Jack,
oh no.
welcome to the show.
Hey, Eric, you can't own no me, man. I woke up, turned on my phone, and the first thing I hear is a rant about geometry, and my little math tutor nerd heart could not handle it.
I mean, that is one way to wake up.
So you know.
Sending love right back. I mean, honestly, gee, I didn't even like math before I got into philosophy, and then I realized that all math
is amazing.
But it's just philosophy. And as soon as you find that out, then it's cool.
No, that's higher level math. I stopped after calculus. Okay.
We will. Okay, Jack, you find a way to get to Austin. We will have a beer, and I will show you why you're wrong about that. But anyway.
Okay, fine, fair. I'll do it.
Cool.
Okay, so I want to be succinct. I don't know if I can. I apologize. I'll try to keep on track here. So just coming out the gate, I am about as far left as you can be, and I'm an atheist. I've been since the 6th grade, and I've watched every show I think you two have been on.
Cool.
So just so you understand or at least have an idea of my frame of reference on this, so you don't think I'm arguing the other side.
Yeah.
I grew up in the Bible Belt, and I used to, obviously, that was listening to anything I was told I couldn't, right? So Marilyn Manson, ICP,
oh my gosh,
crazy stuff. And I remember Bill O'Reilly would do, he had this whole segment he did for a while, and it was Fox News was what was on. Mm-hmm. And it was about attack on our children in America. He did this week-long segment, and he would interview these artists about, don't your lyrics contain misogyny or violence or suicidal ideas? And then these debates are still on YouTube. Go watch them. Mm-hmm. Bill O'Reilly Manson, Bill O'Reilly ICP.
Misogyny though?
Yeah. Oh no, Bill.
Yeah,
Are you so concerned?
I don't know. I kind of want to see Bill O'Reilly take the anti-misogyny, like.
I really don't want to see a debate between Bill O'Reilly and Marilyn Manson. That's just like, there's no winning in that situation.
Like,
no, it's actually, I'd really like whatever allegations and stuff happening today. At that point in time, it was fantastic. But that's not really the point. The point was, the framing from O'Reilly was, we have to think of the children as justification to censor these artists, more so than having a label on the album. And now the censorship angle from think of the children, it's for the children, is not new. It wasn't new then, and they're still using it today. If we were to talk about just the trans thing and how that's grooming, even though that's total BS, right? Like, but they're still using that tactic. That hasn't gone away, and it's a fundamentalist, Christian nationalist, Republican, whatever authoritative group, they do the same thing.
Yeah.
And obviously, at that time and still today, I came down on the side of, well, that's BS. Like, freedom of choice, you don't have to listen to that. If your kids are listening to that, you can talk to them. You could prevent them from buying the music at that time. That we live in 2022, they're just streaming it. I know it's different. But the point is, like, you can still block things if you don't want them to hear that. But now, flipping the script, there's been a crisis on the left, particularly on YouTube, less so in mainstream media because they don't really do this as much, of we shouldn't platform problematic person X because we don't want to give a platform to their ideas to influence other people, which sounds like the exact same line of reasoning, but instead of don't think of the children, it's don't think of the grown-ups in the room. Which I also had a little bit of a problem with, but then Trump got elected, and then even though he's been out of office for 2 years now, you know, a good 32% of the Republican base is like worshiping him like an idol, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what facts are, we're in a post-facts world. So like, okay, maybe there is something to this idea of we shouldn't let certain ideas circulate. And unfortunately, it's because people just are not well enough educated to handle that information, which is horribly depressing because that does not reflect my personal politics at all. So I just wanted to lay that at your feet and do with it what you may.
Yeah. I feel like you've been trying to jump in, so.
I do have a couple thoughts, but it might go long if you want to do it.
Okay. So, Jack, I think that there are a couple of different ways that we could talk about this and different angles we could go down. The one that I do want to talk about is that the reason that it is so concerning when a radical fundamentalist religious group starts petitioning to erase certain things from society and are effective at it is because it is an effective strategy. If you do not acknowledge a thing, if you make laws to reduce the number of a thing, if you are actively trying to erase something from public consciousness, that is a very, very effective tactic. It will work. And so the issue is not the method here. The idea that you should remove the things in society that you do not want to see in that society is shared across all demographics, right? We are harm reductionists. We want to reduce harm. We want to reduce making avenues for harm to continue to happen. So it's not necessarily oh no, maybe it works. It does work, absolutely. That's the problem. The problem is is who is advocating for that and what they're advocating for. And that's where we have to have this conversation and focus in on it. Is it more harmful to people to experience lyrics that are maybe sexually provocative? Or is it more harmful for them to be denied sex education in school and have to navigate that? So there are, the point I'm trying to make here is, I feel like a lot of the time, especially in leftist spaces, anything that mimics or uses similar tactics to what the right does is considered taboo or bad just by virtue of the fact that the right has done it in the past or is doing it currently. And that is such a harmful way to go about things, because those tactics work because of, look at where we are now, right? Those things work. It's just what you're using them for. What are these tools going to do? And so we should not be concerned about using the same methods, the same tools as our opponents. We should be playing their game back at them. It's just we need to make sure that what we are doing is consistently interrogating ourselves. What are the things that we are bringing to the table here? What is it that we want to see less of? And what is our motivation for that? Is it, fear of the other? Not a good reason. Is it harm reduction? Cool. Maybe we can talk about it. But these conversations have to happen in that space and not in the space of, should censorship be a thing? I think it should, but not necessarily top down, but bottom up. All that to say, yes and no, and kind of. Eric.
I'm so glad you talked about censorship. I have disagreements on censorship, but I think that'll get us kind of far afield.
Consensus-ship.
Oh, God.
Boom. That's the thing now.
I kind of want to attack the platforming angle, but Jack, I want to give you the chance to respond to V before I do.
I mostly agree with everything V said. I think, I know that the tactic works. I guess that's what's distressing about it, because you said bottom up, and that sounds horrible to me because we know where the bottom is. They're not educated on anything.
Oh, the top isn't educated either.
It's just, who am I to say they're lacking education on that? As someone who works in education, my job is to try to get people to not just learn the material to pass the test, but to learn why, or to learn how, so they can apply it to other things. It's really that whole critical thinking thing.
Jack, you're being too kind here. You do realize that Matt Gaetz is in office, correct?
Oh, I know.
Do you know who is in office here in Texas where we are?
Not Devin Nunes where I am.
Give yourself a little bit more credit.
So I don't think education is the problem here. There are educated people who are really, really stupid.
Dumb.
Right. Yeah. And there are people who have never gone to school for a day or don't have a GED who are changing the fucking world, right? We've got what's her face? Greta Gerwig, the Thunberg, who is a kid who hasn't even graduated, who is doing really important research.
Greta's in university by now.
Yeah, I would argue that compared to same-age children in the U.S., she's pretty damn educated, but.
Yeah.
I mean, the education system is certainly another topic, but I wouldn't draw the distinction between educated and non-educated so much as people who are empathetic and people who are not, living in a system where lack of empathy gets you farther.
Fair enough.
That's actually, Mormons are super empathetic. They're just wrong.
So I think we're maybe crossing into a few different territories there. But I do. Can I hit the platforming angle before we move on to the next call? Because I'd really love to hit it. Jack, every few months, for as long as I have been on YouTube, there have been people who have emailed going, I wrote a book. You need to have me on your show. I'm going to be there in 3 weeks. Or, hey, I just deconverted. I would like to host your show. Just let me know when that works for you. Or, oh, hey, I want to spread the gospel. Let's see, I get out of church at noon. Let's do a half hour on your show. And there's this assumption that you get to be on our fucking show. And the fact is that right there is, this is our platform. We get to decide who's being on who is on our show. The examples that I gave aren't immoral or unethical people. It's just fucking entitled people. Us not granting you our audience is not censorship. It is not stifling your free speech. It is drawing a boundary that says, hey, there are some things that you are not entitled to. And so when it comes to platforming, when it comes to people saying, oh, well, do we want to platform this or that? I've also been around long enough in these spaces to see that no matter how stupid the idea is, if you have a big enough platform, it will grow legs. That's just how it works, and I hate it, but it's true. Someone does something awful, if you've got the platform and you even say something about it, it will grow 10 times bigger than if you hadn't said anything at all. Mm-hmm. And so the platforming end of it, I think, is something else. It's a different conversation than the censorship piece. It's recognizing that when you have a platform, you have a responsibility to your audience, and you are taking on the responsibility of what the impact of that is. And I think that people getting deplatformed, I think most often that's not censorship. That's people, very entitled people, crying foul because they don't get to have the privilege that they thought that they could. Like if I turn up at a university and say I want to speak at this university and they say no, and I cry to the press saying that I wasn't allowed to speak at this university,
then Ben Shapiro will have you on his show.
Right, exactly. And you can make the same argument. Like Bill O'Reilly platformed Marilyn Manson to the audience that watches Bill O'Reilly and probably didn't know who Marilyn Manson was until that interview. And guess who got the benefit from that? Both Bill and Marilyn.
Oh, yeah.
They both benefited from that. And so another thing that you definitely want to think about is, when is this conversation around censorship versus platforming actually just what collateral damage is being done by people play acting in front of a camera when they both benefit from it, right? Because you don't know what happened off screen. Apparently, a lot of those people at Fox are totally chill until they get on camera and act all offended, right? And so they both got off with new fans, new people listening to their shit, more money, and everybody else is left with the fallout. So when we're having this conversation, we also need to be thinking, who here is benefiting from this? Are they both benefiting? If so, it may just be for show.
Yeah.
So
I get that. I appreciate you guys taking the time. And Eric, you kind of hit on the head where you said that it doesn't really matter. The idea will grow legs. And that's, I guess, what's ultimately really depressing. We need more skeptics.
Absolutely, we do. Real fast, Jack, before you go, I do want to recommend you check out Tom Nicholas's latest video called Why Elon Musk Couldn't Save Free Speech. It talks about this exact issue, and it's a really good video. I'll also link it in the description, but feel free to go check that out.
Thank you, V. I appreciate it. Thank
Absolutely.
you both. Have a great day.
Bye.
You too. This one looks, Trump call. I didn't get to do that. Can we do this one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we do, does anybody else remember the time that Marilyn Manson was brought on after the Columbine shootings for an interview, and they said if you could have spoken to the shooters, what would you tell them? And Marilyn Manson, in one line, absolutely redeemed himself in so many people's eyes, and it was because he had the platform to be able to do it that he did. I know afterwards we found out he's an absolute piece of shit, but at that time he said, I would have listened, because if somebody would have listened to them, maybe they could have stopped this tragedy. Like, that's the power of having that kind of platform.
Yeah, I'm going to shy very, very far away from granting any amount of acquiescence to that person.
I mean, hey, you know what? Awful things, absolutely. I'm not saying it's a good person, but I'm saying that is an example of just what can happen when you have those platforms. But we have so many callers.
I know you really
end.
wanted to talk to Phillip, though. So let's
please.
talk to Phillip.
Yay!
Phillip, welcome to the show. You are wondering if the universe is deterministic and what that means for caring about what other people do?
Yeah. How do you justify blaming or praising people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Since they couldn't have really done anything else, right?
Right, exactly. So let's dive in a little bit for people who maybe need a little bit more of a summary here. What exactly is your question? What kind of a determinism are you positing here?
Since we don't really have free will, how do we go about being mad at somebody for cutting us off or doing something that we didn't like, and or then conversely, why should we praise somebody if they were always gonna cure cancer or something?
Yeah. Okay. Good question. Eric, I know you wanted to take this call, so I'm going to hand it over to you.
Oh, okay. Well, so let's take a look at the idea of determinism, because I feel like there's this nihilism, there's this kind of surrender that people have when they think that, oh my gosh, if I don't have free will, then we're all just meat robots and there's no point in doing anything good or bad. And I think that just doesn't make a lot of sense. Let's say we were meat robots for just a second. Let's say that people don't actually have an active choice. They're just kind of experiencing those things out. And I think that we've built systems to encourage, discourage, and prevent certain behavior, right? So if you do something dangerous and prove that you're a danger to yourself or others, whether or not you did it by free will or whether or not you are a malfunctioning robot, putting you in jail and taking you away from the population is the appropriate thing to do. It prevents danger that you could do to yourself and others. If we understand that praising behavior that we want to see reinforces and causes that individual to exhibit that behavior more, then what we're doing, you're seeing the impact of it. I mean, should we give credit to people who do good things? Well, it encourages people to do more good things. Whether or not there is some kind of grand scheme of, free will around it doesn't change the very tangible fact that, receiving benefit for a thing reinforces that behavior. And so even if you're just talking about randomly through iteration, you can see in machine learning that if you're selecting for a certain behavior in machine learning, you're going to see that behavior more. I think that that's just, I mean, if we were to extrapolate that, I think you'd have the same thing.
Sure. I totally agree with you. I'm thinking, because I'm the type of person that gets, kind of bitter when someone, screws me over or something, and I could hold on to that for a while. But after having, learned about determinism and, agreeing with that concept, it kind of throws my bitterness off.
Hey, if it's a way that you feel like gives you more understanding or tolerance for other people, cool. If that's how you interpret that, I mean, that is a just as valid a worldview as believing that free will exists. And, there's no, because we are at an impasse, as far as I'm aware, in terms of proving one or the other, regardless, or definitely, then if that is what you want to believe because it helps you exist with other people in this hellscape, cool. Good for you. That is awesome. If it's going to impact the way you make your decisions, I would make sure that you are using as sound a logical case as possible. But yeah, I think the thing to keep in mind here, though, is when we talk about a deterministic universe, a lot of the time what we end up doing is talking about a universe where everybody has like a path laid out for them that is you can't get away from it. It is just this inevitable forward push by something, biology, fate, something that is just pushing them forever towards this one goal. Whereas I think that the understanding that I have is what impacts us is not under our control, therefore it is determined. But that impact includes if we are blamed for things or if we are praised for things. That is going to impact how I do things next time because I don't have control over how my brain interprets that praise. And, elicits a response that makes me want it again, right? And so the idea of punishment and praise should always be tempered by the idea that free will probably, especially as we understand it, is a myth. But we shouldn't then say, therefore, everybody is just on their little trolley track doing their thing and we have no impact. It then becomes a conversation of, okay, what are the impacts that are determining these courses of action? And I guarantee you, how other people perceive you and interact with you is a huge determining factor in a deterministic world. So whether or not we even can make the decision to praise or blame somebody, which is an entire other conversation that could get very meta, I think that it does make a lot of sense to continue to praise good behavior, because what that does is that reinforces that behavior deterministically, because that's how our brains are structured, is to find those patterns, enjoy things, and pursue those patterns that we enjoy. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily choice. A lot of people think that you need to have choice for that, but I mean, we can point to computers that can build better versions of themselves. We are sufficiently complex to do those kinds of things. And so it's not out of the realm of possibility that we are making that impact and driving towards well-being. I don't know. I think Phillip just kind of threw me off. Phillip, you kind of threw me off with the getting angry in the car thing.
I mean,
because,
yeah.
Because I don't.
Well, I'm glad.
Yeah, me too. Because it really got me thinking. I don't chalk it up to them not having free will, but what I would offer as an alternative is maybe their motivation is entirely unrelated to your motivation.
Like, in your head, just be like, oh, they probably really need to shit.
They really got to poop.
Like, that is...
Yeah.
They really, really got to poop.
I've been there. I get that.
You know,
I've done similar thinking exercises.
Yeah,
in similar situations.
They're a parent and they found out that their child is injured and they're trying to get home quickly, or maybe they're driving really, really slow. But you know, what if there is just a really hot pot of coffee in the passenger seat? You know, like, I don't know. I guess that's the route that I go with it, instead of saying that, you know, oh, you know, they're just on some track that eliminates, you know, I don't know. I guess determinism itself doesn't do it for me. I go down a different path. But either way, y'all are having a deeper conversation, and I'm sitting here thinking about someone having to poop on the highway. So I don't know if I'm adding very much to the conversation, but I really appreciate the call.
Yeah, thank you so much for calling in, Phillip. I would love to continue talking about this.
Big fan.
Yeah, feel free to call back.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, what was that?
I just said feel free to call back. We'd love to keep talking about determinism. It's fun.
Oh, hell yeah. This is my first time calling, and it went very well.
Good. Glad
Awesome.
you felt it. So did we. All
Take
right.
care, Phil.
Thanks, Phillip. Okay. We've got
That was sweet.
time for one more call before we
do?
wrap
Oh,
up,
yay.
because here's the deal, y'all. We usually read super chats at the end of the episode. There are some doozies in there that are going to probably elicit a repeat of the rant that you saw at the beginning. So I want to leave a little bit of extra time to get through all of those and let Eric feel his big feelings. If you want to add in a super chat to see if you can get the smoke out the ears situation that you saw earlier, feel free. We're going to leave a little extra time for that. But first, Eric, let's pick one more. Who do you want to talk to?
Ooh, do you have one in particular?
They all look interesting to me, so you go for it. I've been kind of blowing through these.
No worries. So let's talk to someone that I don't think has called before.
Okay.
Let's talk to Cameron in Minnesota. I don't think I created a lower third yet, but it says that they have a Muslim coworker who's constantly trying to proselytize, and they're looking for a source to counter specifically Muslim apologetics.
Nice.
I feel like that's a really interesting, yeah.
Cameron, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about what you're dealing with, and if you can end on a question, we'll make sure to answer that for you.
And
Yep.
and
So
actually, while Cameron talks,
what's odd about this situation is we're actually really good friends, but like he knows I'm an atheist, and he's like always trying to proselytize to like other coworkers or whatever. And whenever I come around the corner, he's like, he just kind of stops talking. And then, like, he's like, oh, you're just hard-headed, you're just tough-headed, but like, I don't know enough about Muslim apology. I just know, like, your standard arguments. Like, I know how to point out the logical fallacies and the standard problems with believing something that there's no evidence for. But, like, he's willing to listen. Mm-hmm. It's just, I don't know what to, like, say to, like, I know there's no silver bullet argument. I know there's no, like, one-stop shop. But, like, I just didn't know if you guys knew anything extra about, like, the Muslim apologetics that I don't, and like, maybe something that could help.
Yeah, so I have not had very many conversations with devout Muslims. So this is not speaking from experience, but from what I have seen, a lot of the arguments that they have for their God belief end up being very similar to the arguments that Christian apologetics make. That, of course, will change as you get deeper into, like, the differences in scripture and all of that. But the overarching God claims do tend to be fairly similar. And so I would just start from that space and get your friend to define the God that, is it they, he, him, her?
He, him. It's kind of an interesting case. He was born in Africa, and he came here, but he's lived in, like, 14 different states, and he speaks, like, 4 different languages. Nice. And so, like, he's been,
that's awesome,
like, all around the world.
Yeah. So I would definitely start from the place of just not treating him any differently because of the difference in religion, especially because they are very similar, at least at that core level, to my understanding. I would just start with asking him what kind of a God he believes in, what is his God, and build from there in the same way you would with a Christian. If there is a presumption that you make because of a Christian background or experience with Christians, encourage him to, say, oh, that's not actually true. This is actually what I believe. And just follow that.
That's kind of how I already started. So, like,
okay.
My job is, like, essentially I fix these presses at this injection molding company, and, like, he's a quality control guy now, but, like, when he was just an operator, I was fixing one of his presses, and I was in the mold, and he's like, oh, the devil must have made this happen. And I was like, I'd believe that if the devil existed. And, like, he's like, wait a minute, you don't believe in the devil? And then he's like, wait, you don't believe in God? And I'm like, no, I don't have any evidence for it. Yeah. And so, like, it blew his mind, like, his head exploded.
That is honestly, those small kind of interactions and conversations are a great place to start. The only other thing I would say here is do some looking up of ex-Muslim activists or counter-apologists specifically, because they can more accurately identify where those apologetics kind of fail, in the same way that you would probably prefer to hear somebody who used to be a Christian talking about Christian apologetics. It's always very good to go to sources that have that familiarity. I know Zara Kay is one that I would recommend. If you guys have other examples of...
People in the live chat are pointing out Apostate Prophet.
Oh.
I haven't seen Apostate Prophet, but I trust our community. And
I was going to ask about that. Do you guys have any plans of maybe having him on your show? That'd be a good.
Well, so here's the thing. We're the only show that has hosts live together like this, and it makes us unique. And so we're trying to limit it to situations where we can do that. And so it would need
That's
to,
fair. That's
so
fair.
yeah, it would need to take us, finding this person, being like, okay, is this person worth us saving money to fly them out
Is
here?
this person comfortable being cold called and told to come into our house?
Yeah.
So definitely an option for sure.
And I think that I would push, just as another suggestion, there are a lot of assumptions that people make when you're raised in a primarily Christian environment that you should not make when you're talking to someone who is a different faith background. And so I think it would be really, really beneficial to have a few conversations about laying groundwork. And
Well, one of the things is like when I work night shift, so I was walking upstairs at the shop that we work at, and I seen him doing his prayer stuff, and I let him be. I didn't
yeah, you're not an
interrupt
asshole.
him or anything.
Yeah.
But when he came back downstairs, I was like, dude, you're really into this, aren't you? And that's when we started getting into the whole,
Sure.
conversation back and forth. And we're still really good friends. It's just
That's awesome.
that was how it all started.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And as long as you guys can maintain a consensual conversation where you both feel heard and respected, keep at it. Like this could be really cool to like deepen this intellectual connection you guys have.
Well, where I was trying to go with it is, if you want to deepen that connection, I think it's important to ask him, hey, is there a way to be wrong? What does that look like?
Oh yeah, no, I've done that. I've done that.
Those, if you having those conversations would really, really help, because there are a lot of Christians who would go, oh, if I was wrong, that means I misunderstood the text, or the text was poorly translated. We're working off of a bad version. And there's some people who go, I have the gift of, what's the gift of the Holy Spirit?
There are many.
I think it's foresight or not foresight, but
Discernment. Discernment, right?
Something like that.
I have this magical power that means I'm actually totally right. Like, making sure that you understand where your interlocutor is when it comes to those things will give you more fruitful conversations. And it sounds like you're doing that, which is awesome.
Yeah. Cameron, good luck, and thank you for calling in.
All right. Yeah, thank you. You guys have a good day.
You too. Yeah, anybody, if you have suggestions for channels or activists or counter-apologists that Cameron should look out for, drop them in the comments.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh. That was a fun...
I got kind of pissed off. It was. I felt like we got our energy from a lot of really fun calls, and it was nice to not have to. Like, it was, yeah. Yeah. I agree.
All right, so we do have some super chats for you to read.
Before we dive into super chats, I just want to plug, hey, if you're watching this after the fact and you are sick of the fucking ads, there's a way to get it ad-free.
Oh my God, you are just
fuck.
so liberal with the F-bombs today.
I'm liberal in a lot of ways.
It's a problem.
If you want to get a version of this show or this podcast ad-free, consider going to patreon.com/skepticgeneration. That's patreon.com/skepticgeneration. We add, at certain levels, we thank you in the credits, and there are all kinds of cool stuff. Check it out. Really appreciate it. It goes to help the show. Another thing is, hey, if you're watching this right now, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Hit the notification bell, share this video out. It gets traction, and that is a huge, huge way to help us. And if you want to be like the incredible person, Joe, I'm gonna put that link up one more time. Joe went to tiny.cc/SG wishlist and got us a camera, and we're super, super stoked about it. That stuff really helps. We just need to find a lens now. By the way, if anybody is a fan and knows lenses and can help, contact skepticgeneration@gmail.com. Because that would be really useful.
And that's the full thing. Contact Skeptic Generation. That's not a verb. And then Skeptic Generation.
Fair enough. The email, yes.
The email is contact Skeptic Generation. Okay. All right. We've got some chats. Let's start with Zhang. Sent $2 and says a circle in 3 dimensions is just a sphere.
Okay.
Cool. No problems with spheres?
Well, no, because comments like that don't have anything to do with the roundness of circles. if you want to take a slice out of the middle of a sphere, then you would see that the diameter, all points in the diameter are equidistant from the center.
What if you took a wedge out of a sphere?
What about it?
Huh?
I love you.
Okay.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Billy G sent $10. Your turn.
Eric, as Twain said, never argue with stupid people. They will drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. While that is a really funny quote, I'm very, very hesitant to say stupid people. I think that sometimes people get on to a subject and kind of lose track of what the subject was about and can be kind of absurd in a question, maybe offer something up that doesn't make any sense. And because of that, the question is stupid. But that's only because it has no relevance to what's going on. But I like the quote.
Kendall Brast sent $20. Thank you, Kendall, and says, absolutely love your show. Eric's rant was so invigorating. He's normally so calm and laid back. Thanks to both of you for what you do. You start my weekly run of Sunday shows with an injection of fun, sanity, and reason.
Oh, yay.
I like that. Thank you so much, Kendall.
Marcel de Jong sent €2 and says, not sure if anyone agrees, but circles are round. I agree with you. I agree with
the
you.
bar, it is so low.
It is so low.
Zhang sent another $5 and says, there's a 1928 silent film about Noah's Ark with a realistic flood scene. Part of it was cut because 3 extras reportedly drowned on set. Jeez, that's horrific. And it doesn't surprise me based on the movie making practices of the 1920s. That sounds about right. Jeez.
Yeah.
No animals were harmed in the making of this movie. People, though.
Yeah. I heard a lot about, a lot of horses dying on sets in the early days of film as well.
Never look up how they made Milo and Otis. Never look up how they made Milo and Otis.
I loved that movie.
It's terrible.
Okay, I don't want to know.
Okay.
Don't. I'm just going to blank that from my mind.
I told you not to look it up. I was helping.
Rick, how do you pronounce that? Dieveters?
Possibly.
Sent €20 and says, regarding the circle tweet, I was being pedantic. You are 100% right. I apologize. Great rant. Keep up the great work, you two. So
Rick got called out.
Nothing to apologize for. I love pedantry. I just want to focus it to relevance. Appreciate it. Didn't mean to call you out. You didn't have to do that, but appreciate you back and continue challenging us. It's just that if you're going to challenge us, and this is for everybody, be relevant. It helps. It will further the conversation. Sean sent. Oh, sorry. This is you.
I mean, I'm just going to be talking like it's gibberish.
Okay. Sean Isherwood sent £5 and says the unit circle at the origin in the taxicab metric in 2D is defined by all x and y coordinates with x plus y equaling 1. That's a square in Euclidean space. Okay. So let's talk about that for just a second. If you are going to define a circle and that is the shape it has in that scenario, then it is circular because the definition of, it is round because the definition of round follows looking like a circle. So in that space, that would be it, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense given the universe that we're in, but because the definition of round is tied to like a circle, then whatever that circle happens to look like in that very, very unique hypothetical, you're not going to get away from that. Now, if you want to extrapolate a different measuring method, right, in the same way, oh, hey, I weigh 120 pounds, which no, I'm not a child. I weigh 210 pounds, and that's fine, but I weigh a different amount in kilograms. I cannot then say, oh, this many kilograms, that's how many pounds I am. If you are looking at, a system that changes things around and you try and extrapolate that to not that system, you're not helping anybody. If anything, it's just confusing things, and I really don't understand how that's helpful or useful. So Sean Isherwood, if I'm wrong, respond. If not, respond.
And then RG sent $1.99 and the weekly banana.
Thank you, RG.
I think we should just like start like a separate podcast or a newsletter or something called the Weekly Banana.
The Weekly Banana?
I like it.
I don't know. Sounds like the atheist nightmare.
I mean, there you go. Hey guys, would you watch a Weekly Banana?
Oh no. I once did a show where there was an editor who put a banana behind me. I was in like a panel, and they chased me with the banana because everyone else was talking and I wasn't, and I was just bored.
And so you stole everybody else's thunder and were the worst panel.
No. I was up in the corner quietly. Like somebody in the comments wound up finding it, but it was that was fun. Anyway. Okay, I'm an asshole. Fine.
I'm not talking, so I'm gonna run around behind the people who are talking and get all the attention.
Sean Isherwood sent £2. There we go. You forgot about absolute values of X and Y. What does that have to do with the roundness of circles? Please round that back to the conversation and let me know. Okay, I have thoughts, but they will keep us here for a hot second. So, tabling that. Sean, feel free to continue in the comments of the video. In the meantime, thank you everybody for joining this week. This was fun. I enjoyed the conversations. I enjoyed the rant, even though it was scary. And we will see you next week. In the meantime, we're glad we had this talk.